Trust, brought to you by Harry J. Steakhouse, Freddy's Market, AAA Motor Speedway, and Best Buy Flooring.
Hi, I'm Jen Wallner.
And I'm Rodney Wallner with the Wallner Home Selling Team at Berkshire Hathaway.
Hey, Rodney, how do you sell your home for top dollar?
That's easy. Call the Wallner Home Selling Team at 314-810-SOLD.
What if I want a flexible commission rate?
Call the Wallner Home Selling Team at 314-810-SOLD.
When's the best time to sell your home?
Right now. Call the Wallner Home Selling Team at 314-810-SOLD.
For all your real estate needs, call the Wallner Home Selling Team at 314-810-SOLD.
That's 314-810-SOLD.
Hey, this is Chris Arps. If you enjoy a good cigar like I do, check out Dorset Cigar at 11396 Dorset Road in Maryland Heights. They'll help you find the perfect smoke, and they have a fantastic premium selection. Mention promo code NewsTalkSTL for 7% off. Visit DorsetCigar.com.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
It's a beautiful sunny day out there. High temperatures in the low 80s. The humidity not bad at all. It's in the moderate range. And with all that sunshine, going to be beautiful. Very nice at the ballpark this evening with temperatures in the 70s. And again, not too muggy. Overnight lows in the 60s. Now showers and thunderstorms return to the forecast tomorrow as high temperatures reach into the low to mid 80s. In the First Alert Weather Center, I'm KMOV meteorologist Kent Earhart.
This hour of Colombo Company brought to you by Gutter Pros. Water goes where we tell it. Call 314-656-7195 or visit them at gutterpros.com.
Hello and welcome to a very nice, mild, perfect day to be outside Tuesday afternoon here on Colombo and Company. I'm not outside. I wish I was. Hope you get a chance to be outside today. Sit outside and listen to the show. It'll be great. We have got a big one for you today. Lots to talk about. I'm Tony Colombo here in studio with producer Ashlyn, and we have every day there's more information, more reaction, more statements, more reports that you may or may not be able to believe or take at face value, all surrounding the situation in Iran and the peace agreement. And boy, we have got more of that today as we go through the afternoon. The Trump administration addressing the future, the timeline, and sort of the path forward on this 60-day negotiation period that we're now in to finalize all of the details. Updates on the Strait of Hormuz, updates on the agreements about the Iranian nuclear program, all of it and more. We're going to talk about today as we go through the afternoon. We also have some Supreme Court news to talk about it. It's a perfect day to do that because we're going to be joined by our legal expert, Susie Moore. In just about an hour from now, just after 3 o'clock, Susie will be with us. And there's one case that we talked about yesterday that I want to get more insight and filled in on from Susie. This is the case regarding in Washington, D.C. that says police officers and the law, just the law in general, should look at and treat differently and have a different sort of set of rules for people with different skin color, which is so backwards and wrong, and just unbelievable that ruling and decision was made, in 2026. So I want to talk about that case a little bit more with Susie this afternoon. Also today, the Supreme Court unanimously sided with a Michigan county about seizing property. When the government seizes property, how much are the property owners owed? This is an interesting story. I want to get into that as we go through the afternoon. Speaking of some legal cases, we also have the Media Research Center and their case against The View, which is super interesting, especially from, right now it's election season and we're all dealing with political ads and lots of voices coming at us. And there is a case being made against The View. So The View claims to be a bona fide news program. Did you know that? Did you know that's the classification for The View? It's a news program. Therefore, they don't. If they're a news program, there are some requirements that other programs have that they don't because of that status. And there is a group out there that is making a very strong case to prove that The View is not a bona fide news interview program and is, in fact, a very highly biased program that is out for one reason and one reason only, and that is to carry the message of and promote one political side. I bet you could guess which side that is. So that's really interesting. I want to get into that as well. And we also have several stories about Democrat math. There's been a bunch of filings recently about politicians' net worth, their spending, their campaign spending, things like that. And let's just say a lot of the numbers aren't adding up. And the spotlight is back on people like Ilhan Omar and Tim Walz. Also a news story out today about, but right along the same lines, about Senator Ruben Gallego, Democratic senator out of Arizona, who is one of Eric Swalwell's best friends. So you probably get an immediate idea of what this guy's all about. Yeah, he's on the hot seat today for spending habits when it comes to his campaign funds. But that story, when we get to it, I might actually make you mad because it seems like there's a lot of misuse and problems there. But unfortunately, the way the laws are written, maybe there's not. And maybe that it warrants the discussion more than anything. So, yeah, lots to dig into as we go through this busy Tuesday afternoon. I mentioned Susie Moore is going to join us in the 3 o'clock hour. Also today in the 3 o'clock hour, we're going to be joined by our law enforcement expert, former Missouri State Representative Justin Sparks. He'll be with us around 3:25, 3:30 this afternoon. Always a great conversation there. And I have to admit, I've buried the lead today because the most important news of the day and my biggest, happiest announcement is that it's Tuesday afternoon, and for the first time in a couple of months, 7-8 weeks, we finally have the return of our regular Tuesday partner who has been out for some time dealing with some personal things that we'll see if we'll talk about it here in a second, but I'm so glad to welcome back to the show on a regular basis every Tuesday, again, going forward, from nothingbuttruth.com, the great Crane Durham. Crane, buddy, how are you?
Big hug to you, brother. And
Back at you, dude.
Hey, and the audience, thank you. Great to be back with you all. Stepped out for a little bit, had an adjustment on the heart, still kind of recovering, but was blessed with an amazing surgeon and incredible support team, nurses, and intensive care, and just generally with the rehabilitation that I'm getting is fantastic. The greatest blessing of my life is and always will be my wife, Catherine, who has been getting me everything, taking care of everything, keeping track of things. I mean, it's been amazing. And I'm truly blessed to have
An
a wonderful
adjustment
family.
on the heart.
Yeah.
My friend, that is
You like
that's the
that?
understatement of
Yeah.
the year. Lots of folks have been asking about Ukraine, and I don't want to air your personal business
No, it's
out
okay.
there. We've just said that that you would be back soon, and that you were dealing with some things.
Yes.
But just so you know, there's been lots of folks asking about you, and we've missed you
Well,
tremendously.
Thank you. Well, I've missed them, and I miss y'all. I miss talking about these issues. You find out what you really love when you can't do it. And I'm particularly fortunate in the way of being able to coach with people I love and teach people I love. And then to come in here and speak to the issues of the day, which is the defense of the American dream and American exceptionalism, and to remind us, I don't think we need much reminding in Generation X, but we live in the greatest country ever, and we're under a Marxist Islamist threat, and we can't go silent. We can't go silent. We got to tell the truth, and that's the good thing. The truth doesn't have an expiration date. And one thing I love about your coverage, Tony, is it's not about the person, it's about the policy. And that's what we talk about, because we could have disagreements whether they're an R or D. I just think the D's are, intellectually challenged. So that's their stumbling
The D's
block.
have been hijacked by an extremist belief that has taken them down a very dangerous path that they are attempting to bring the rest of the country down with them, and that's that's an important thing to talk about. And Crane, the show hasn't been the same without you, especially on Tuesdays. So we're so glad to have you back. You could speak to this.
Yeah.
There's nothing like when you have a very serious incident, whether it be medical or legal, whatever it is, when you have a very serious incident in your life, you are reminded of just how important these things that we are arguing about on a daily basis is. There's nothing like, going through a major medical event to really show you why we need to get our healthcare system straightened out.
Right.
Because I'm sure you dealt with lots of frustrations, as many others do. And sometimes when you need, I know you got wonderful care, and that's the most important thing. But just even from like speaking with Dr. Tobler on a weekly basis, the best doctors in the world often are having to jump through hoops or deal with hurdles and things that that they shouldn't have to provide the best care possible. But it's these types of issues, and when we see major events on the world stage regarding war or law and order, it's just there's nothing like that to remind you how important it is that we fight for the rights, the constitutional rights that were put in place by our founding fathers, and to see them out the way that they were intended, and not let them be corrupted by people with a political agenda and personal gain that they are looking for to pervert these rights.
That's so true. And it's interesting because this touches just a few issues here. And by the way, when I said Democrats, I don't mean all Democrats. I know there are sensible ones. It's just you've lost your party because the Democrat Socialists have taken over, and they're for real, and it's going to take political courage to address them. Here it is, Tony. I think of the fact that our rights come from God and not from government. And it's interesting because, like Father's Day, we just had Father's Day, just did a video on this, but we're looking for a lot of solutions to the problems that we're seeing on our television and going, what are these kids rioting? Why is crime up, gang activity, and et cetera, and education problems and the whole thing. And you think, well, the answer is daddy. And you don't want to talk about that because that seems judgmental. It's not. There can be great single parents single parents. My wife was one for a little
Mhm.
while there. And so I know that, but we've got to identify the problem and recognize that we've been given a structure under our Judeo-Christian foundation that is the intact family of a mother and a father, and how important that is. And I think that's why Marxists target it, by the way. I think they target the family because they replace the family with the government. They got all kinds of control. And we're already seeing that with the family being replaced by the school. I digress. But what you said about our rights, back in 93, I had the privilege of going over to the former Soviet Union, saw gangster capitalism up close, and just as a spectator, of course, but recognizing through the Cold War what we were fighting for and what the dissidents were fighting for, and understanding what communism is and how awful it is. The socialism being the economic system, communism being political system, inevitably going there, and seeing the death toll. And so when I think of the people that are still supporting it, like Bernie Sanders, I have to say they're historically, I don't mean this as a jab, I mean this as reality. They're historically, contextually, economically retarded. And that's a big time problem because they're giving a really bad solution to people that are willfully ignorant, and they don't seem to want to learn. So we're going to have to continue to get the truth out there, because the American dream is truly unique to America, just like American exceptionalism. The fact is, when somebody has a dream on their heart and they've been given a talent or a good service production, and really pursue that to the betterment of society, because you've got to make the consumer happy. You know, that's how you tame the producer to this consumer. So you talk about all those things and you say, this is it. This is why we're here. And so whether it's our faith that's attacked, whether it is our economic system, the liberty, the order of liberty we have is so important. And we have such a blessing to live in this country. It is the best country. And I was proud to be American under Joe Biden when he wasn't there. And maybe Susan Rice was doing things. Maybe she got to do it because she lied about Hillary Clinton. I don't know. But the point is we have a gift. And when we defend these things, it's not to say we don't want to solve the problem. We just don't want to, we don't want to exacerbate it.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they bring in government to do that, like our healthcare system, like our school system. Take anything in that way, and you go, wait a second, if government gets involved, it's going to screw things up and exacerbate it, because it's not based on anything but political. And if it's based on political and non-efficiency actually solving problems, you got a huge problem there. Lastly, I know I've gone on.
No, you're
Forgive
good.
me, but here's the big thing.
8 weeks of stuff to get out, buddy.
Yeah. Well, you get in touch with the fact that, hey, this is not forever. I have maybe 70, 80 good years left. I think I'm going to live at least that long. I know it sounds crazy to some, but I truly believe that. But after this, there's another part of our journey. And what we do here is we were given an opportunity. And if we don't check in with the manufacturer, our creator, made us unique with a unique thumbprint to make the imprint on the world, wow, that's a problem. And I had to explore my own faith a bit more. And I recognized that I had a lot of things that were holding me back. And really, it was humbling, because I thought about the fact of people I had been with, and I held grudges, and I said, oh, I forgive and all that. And then I said, you know what? I've been forgiven, yes. And wow, do I deserve it? Heck no. But also, I thought of myself in that particular situation. You know, you have that self-righteousness, like, I was right, and this was totally wrong, and there was an injustice. And then you sit to yourself and go, well, maybe you were a little more human than you thought. Maybe, maybe a little of it falls on you. Okay, maybe a little more falls on you. Maybe it's this, maybe this, but it might be. And so I really had a chance, and it really helped me, because I've had the privilege of working with a lot of good people in my life and being around them. And it reminded me of their friendships. And it really, it spoke to me as a disciple in progress to say, look, we're all doing the best we can with our shaped head. And we can understand that some things don't work for us and some things do. But remember, we don't want to hold that grudge. We can remember, of course, but not with bitterness, with understanding, because at the end of the day, we're just as fallen. And so that helped me, and it gave me a better perspective of not only my past and present, but it's certainly my future. And one thing I always say to you is, in this business, it's crazy. It's not just this business, any business I've been in. it's crazy, Tony, because when I see somebody doing something great and good, and what I love about News Talk STL is I see people stepping up, and it is a great job because of the listenership and how connected we are to our listeners, because we're defending things that are not being defended on the mainstream media, and they're being lied about constantly.
It's our responsibility. It's our responsibility. Yeah. It's not the responsibility of everybody to go out and talk about news and politics and inform. Like, it's not your job to do that in, whatever walk of life you're in, but it is your responsibility if you're going to take this job of being on a news talk station. It's our responsibility to inform people and in this format to give our opinion, but to also explain, to explain the whole situation and therefore back up our opinions. I'm just thrilled to have you back. Crane Durham is back with us. And, kind of a joke, but also kind of serious. Coming off of a heart procedure, you sure you're going to want to get into some of these stories? Because you might get worked up today.
It's fine. The valves are fine and everything's firing.
All right, baby.
I thought I was intense.
We might get that
before,
blood pumping a little bit today.
Well, all systems are go.
I
for
love
that.
it. I love it. Crane Durham from NothingButTruth.com is back with us. He'll be with us all the way until 3 o'clock. And I want to get into the latest coming out of Iran. We haven't had a chance to talk to Crane and get his thoughts on this Iranian agreement and the path that we are on with this 60-day negotiation period. Also, the strange math coming out of some of these Democratic politicians' campaign reports and financial reports. There's a lot of really interesting things to talk about today as we go through the afternoon. Crane Durham is with us. We will get you the latest coming out of the peace agreement, the latest announcements from the Trump administration about the negotiations with Iran. Next.
Just a small town girl.
Made in St. Louis for St. Louis. It's News Talk STL.
She took the midnight train going anywhere.
If you have a phone, you have a radio. Download the all-new News Talk STL app.
Love the all-new app.
And listen anytime, anywhere.
Bill, that's a big smile for an old politician.
I'm thinking about our plan. It's slick enough to make a lobbyist blush. First, we hoodwink voters with Amendment 5. Tell them it's a tax cut. Once they're hooked, we decide who pays the higher taxes.
So it's not a tax cut plan, and we don't get a say?
Right, just swaps who pays the tax, but it does remove 3 voter-passed taxpayer constitutional protections. That lets us levy new taxes on services, increase sales taxes, and even tax home sales. And voters will no longer get to vote on tax hikes.
Higher sales taxes on groceries, gas, service taxes on doctor visits, childcare, and even rent on apartments. Jeez. Taxes could exceed 20%.
Sure, they figure that up to 80% of taxpayers will pay more taxes. Many, hundreds more. Seniors, they'll get hit even harder. But our big donors will cut a fat hog.
The ones getting butchered by Amendment 5 are most taxpayers. I'm voting no on 5.
Paid for by Missourians for fair taxation.
News Talk STL is turning 5, and you're invited to the party. Join us Friday night, June 26th at Frankie Martin's Garden in Cottleville for a totally rad celebration with the Retro Nerds, St. Louis's favorite 80s tribute band. Live on the outside stage from 7 to 10. It's an all-ages show, so bring the whole family and stop by and see us at the News Talk STL Pavilion right near the stage. Frankie Martin's Garden, the place for and about community in Cottleville. Details at frankiemartinsgarden.com.
It's not pleasant to hear it, but Missouri is falling behind in its spending of state tax dollars, education, and health care. But there are ways to get Missouri moving forward again and produce a better life for all of us. That's why we at the Show Me Institute put together a 2026 Missouri Blueprint, a roadmap on how the state can move to a brighter future. The blueprint covers policy ideas from taxes to government transparency, from education to health care and budget reform. Let's allow students to attend the school of their choice. Let's adopt new proven methods to help the many school kids who can barely read. Let's limit state spending growth for Missouri's long-term financial stability. And let's invest in future needs with more nuclear energy. Why not common sense reforms to make things better for all Missourians? Check out our 2026 Missouri Blueprint, moving Missouri forward at showmeinstitute.org. The Show Me Minute has been brought to you by Show Me Institute and Show Me Opportunity.
On the next
Larry Connors USA.
The story behind the story when CBS sent a consultant to tell me how to do my job. And what happened next?
Larry Connors USA. Now weeknights 6 until 8 on News Talk STL.
You get a shiver in the dark, it's raining in the park, but meantime, some of the river.
Welcome back to Colombo Company on 101.9 News Talk STL. Crane Durham from NothingButTruth.com is back with us today and going forward again every Tuesday afternoon, which is just wonderful news. And Crane, since we haven't talked to you in several weeks, almost 2 months, we haven't had a chance to get your thoughts on the agreement, the negotiations, everything that has transpired between the United States and Iran. We're still learning about this peace agreement. There's still details that have not been finalized, so we don't even know what the final product is even going to end up looking like yet, but we're getting more details every single day, and I want to get into some of the latest updates and conversations surrounding these this deal and these negotiations. But in general, overall, watching this unfold over the last several weeks, have you felt good about the path that we're on? Do you think we're doing too much? Do you think we're not doing enough? How do you feel about this this process as it stands right now?
Well, I was just so disappointed because President Trump has done more to go after Iran and limit their ability to get a nuclear weapon than any other president in history. And when we have our foot on their neck, we seem to come back out with the idea of believing in things that are fairy tales, like this is a legitimate regime and it is not interested in killing as many people as possible, wiping Israel from the map and America from the map. And so I know there are strategies here, and I know the way President Trump negotiates and does, he's got a lot of information and there's a strategy. And maybe he's looking at the midterms saying, hey, I'm going to lose the midterms and then nothing gets done. So if we don't carry the Senate for certain, but if we can get the House and maintain the House. And so I see political calculations. That doesn't excuse a big no for me. And that is the criticism of Israel has made me sick to my stomach, because we are fighting the same enemy as Israel. And the idea that somehow somebody's going to be a part of a negotiation and they're one of the two parties involved and they're not involved, and they have neighbors that have been terror supporters, and the greatest state sponsor of terrorism involved. J.D. Vance has been an absolute and total disappointment. And I say that recognizing that the Democrats don't have anybody, unless Fetterman on occasion, okay, that's actually giving forth or supporting a policy that works. So their policy would be worse, but I don't know why we're embracing a policy like we did with IAEA inspectors and the Iran deal, which I covered constantly, and I know you did too, because there are always these places where, that they're going to cheat and they're going to go. And so I was really disappointed. I was heartsick because Hezbollah has 241, at least 241 back in 83 service members, and a good portion, the vast majority of them were Marines. They killed them. Is the Iranian arm, and the idea that somehow Hezbollah is just firing a missile out of here and they don't really know. Iran's behind it. They gave license to it. And to criticize Israel and go into the flippin' worst narrative, the most insidious narrative, that somehow Israel is trying to kill civilians and they're being reckless. No, Israel's trying to stay alive and survive, and they will, because they are much stronger than they were on October 7th. But we can't do that to our ally in the world. And the idea that J.D. Vance made the comment, oh, hey, I think Israel should think about the one country that's supporting them. And I'm thinking to myself, well, there we go, total departure from right and wrong, and the fact that the reason we support Israel is because they have the same enemies as we do, and they're the best thing that happened to the Middle East. They're not the problem with it. And so I think to myself, President Trump is going strategically, and I even understand there's a poll. I read only a headline that he's getting higher marks on the economy and all that. But I'm thinking to myself, you don't have to sacrifice the moral argument and history and reality about a despicable regime that slaughters its own people in order to somehow accelerate the rate of settling things. Because you're not settling things. And I know I've given a long answer, but let's go to it. The Straits of Hormuz, still a threat. And basically, we've said, you can shut down the Straits of Hormuz. Guess what? You can throw us into a recession and maybe the world into a depression. That's what the signal sent. That's what it was. Now, over the weekend, I understand President Trump spoke to Marco Rubio and others and said, hey, if they mess with the Straits of Hormuz and they do what they've been doing since the MOU started, well, guess what? We're going to blow them into the Stone Age. I get that. But memorandum of understanding, big loss, big victory for Iran. They are in no way better or stronger than they were before this war. And so both things can be true.
So a couple great points there, and just to dig into a couple of them here, I agree with you completely that it felt like that we went from handling this very well. Donald Trump, I thought, at the beginning of this conflict, was handling the situation better than I can ever remember any administration in my lifetime. And being aggressive and showing force, against terrorists, against bad actors on the world stage. But somewhere along the line, we lost that leverage, and we gave Iran more leverage than they deserved in the process. Now, I'm going to circle back to that one because I think that there might still be a way to bring it all together and save it in the end. But I agree with those frustrations completely, something I've talked a lot about over the last several weeks. The Israel situation, I also agree with. And while what J.D. Vance said about remember who your friends are, there were some Israeli officials that I thought were getting a little bit too big for their britches in what they were saying about the United States, and I didn't mind that reminder as much in context. Unfortunately, of course, getting the proper context from the media is not something that you can count on. But your overall point, I agree with completely. I think another perfect example of that was Donald Trump, telling Benjamin Netanyahu on the public stage that he should. He said basically, I'm not going to tell you what to do in Lebanon and with, Hezbollah, but I think you should be using a softer touch. And I can't help but I always flip test everything. Can you just imagine if any world leader told Donald Trump on the public stage how to defend the country?
Softer touch?
And use a term like softer touch. For me, it's so easy. Let Israel do what it,
let Israel win.
Yeah, just let them win and stay out of it. Anybody that's got a problem with it, when Iran comes to Trump and says, well, hey, look, we're not happy about what Israel's doing, as we're having these negotiations, then the answer is, well, that's Israel. We're talking about our agreement, at very least, you should, at least do that. If you don't want to show a larger amount of support publicly, at least do that and take that off the table. You know what I mean? When it comes to, again, giving Iran some kind of leverage that they don't deserve in this process. But to go back to what I said a minute ago, you know, the idea that this 60-day negotiation period is underway, which I don't like. I don't like that we've just opened up another long window of negotiations. I wish, like I said a minute ago, I wish that we went in with the leverage that we had, and instead of asking them if all of this was okay, just telling them the way it was going to be. But since we're in this negotiation and we still don't have, and there's still a chance to finalize what a nuclear program looks like, what the Strait of Hormuz looks like, this funding to rebuild infrastructure in Iran, how is that going to, who's controlling that money? How is it being used and monitored? There's still some things, there's still a lot of questions to be answered. If the administration handles all of those decisions in a positive way, in a very strong, decisive way to wrap up this negotiation period, Crane, can Donald Trump come out of it ultimately at the end with that same sort of reputation of strength that he had, maybe a couple months ago at the beginning of this?
Not with their current leadership. I think he needs to go level 3, maybe a little deeper, maybe level 4, 5, as he talked about knocking out the first 2 levels of leadership. This leadership is dedicated to their IRGC's goals, and they don't want to. I get the idea they won't have a nuclear weapon, but we can't let them have a nuclear program. There's no reason for it. They haven't demonstrated. And I recognize when President Trump was talking about unconditional surrender. Well, one, you don't want to say that unless you mean it. And I recognize also that it would take troops to go in and get regime change. I also recognize the realities of gas prices, and all of a sudden we've got Democrats concerned about gas prices. Meanwhile, every policy of theirs drives those policies up, prices up, and that's what happened under old man Biden. So the fact is, I recognize the political situation, and I get it. But I also understand that his concern and his focus is not to have an Iran that survives this and then comes back and builds back up just like they would have and did in how they were building up under the agreement with President Obama, and understanding that, saying, hey, look, we don't want to make the same mistake. And I know also President Trump is very different than any other president we've had in my lifetime. So he could be doing a bluff. We could talk about this. It's a fluid situation because I know Rubio's over there kicking some tail, and he's following through on all this. And so I get the fact that there's stuff we don't know. But if we're going to talk to the world, one, stop thanking Putin. That man deserves to be in Hades. I'm not the judge of that, but if it came down to it, I'd remove him from the earth because he's a war criminal. And the other thing is because it lends strength to your opposition, and there is a war against good and evil, and there is a world war in the sense of allies that and enemies going against us. They didn't help us. China didn't help us. North Korea didn't help us. Russia didn't help us. They are attached to Iran. That's part of it. So why would you make statements to bolster them in any way? Recognize that, no, we're not going to go to war full on. We're not going to go to level 10, but recognize we are in conflict with these countries, and they're looking to hurt us, and we're looking to protect ourselves and our allies. Don't send weakness out there because that will create a vacuum, and that is filled with aggression.
And the impact of this and how it does ultimately get worked out, the impact that it's going to have one way or the other on the midterm elections is going to be massive. And if if the Republicans lose control of the House and the Senate, I mean, the last 2 years of the Trump administration are vastly different, and his ability to, get his agenda accomplished is tremendously changed, depending on how these midterm elections, end up. So getting this done decisively, conclusively, and with strength. ASAP is so important, especially heading into those midterm elections. Crane Durham from NothingButTruth.com is with us. And before we run out of time with Crane, I want to have a little bit of fun. Well, maybe it's just you got to laugh or you'll cry. Ilhan Omar, back in the news. Her net worth has changed dramatically again. her net worth and her husband's net worth and their businesses it's like a daily it changes every single day. How much money they have, what businesses they own. Nobody can keep up. We're going to try. I'm going to explain what's going on with Ilhan Omar and her latest financial disclosures. They're making a whole bunch of news, and she's not the only one. Tim Walz is making some news as well, and so is Ruben Gallego, another Democratic senator. It's a meth. The math is a meth. You get? I think I said the math is a meth. It's a meth mess, and I'm gonna fix my mouth and explain it all with Crane Durham. Thanks, buddy. Next.
News, analysis, opinion.
I've got something to say and I can't hold it any longer.
101.9 and 94.1.
You won't hear the truth anywhere but here. News Talk STL.
News Talk STL.
Gutter Pros is the team to call if you are having any issues with your gutters at your home or business. Duh, they're the Gutter Pros, but they are so much more than that. Gutters, but also siding, fascia, soffit, they do it all at Gutter Pros, and I can tell you from personal experience of having a gutter problem at our home that we inherited when we bought our house a few years ago, and then I procrastinated as, unfortunately I think many people do, because you don't know how much it's going to cost and how big of a project is this going to be and how big of an undertaking, and that was literally the worst thing that I could have done. Luckily, I called in time before my gutter issue had turned into a bigger, more damaging, more costly problem down the road. Don't let that happen to your home either. If you have an issue with your gutters or your siding or the fascia or soffit on your home or business, you need to call the Gutter Pros now. They can come out and take care of it. We've been getting some decent weather here lately, but it's still storm season. We've seen plenty of rain, and if your gutters aren't draining properly, or if there's cracks or holes in your siding that's allowing moisture to get back behind there where it's not supposed to be, that can be a problem, and it can be a very costly and damaging problem the longer it festers. So call the team at Gutter Pros now. Take advantage of their free estimates. They'll come out and take a look. If you think you have a problem, they'll let you know one way or the other. If you don't, great. Now you have the peace of mind that there's not a problem and it didn't cost you anything. If there is a problem, at least now you have the peace of mind of understanding what that is and making a plan that is best for your home and your business and your budget to move forward and address that issue. Contact the Gutter Pros now if you have any issues with your gutters, your siding, your fascia, soffit, and contact them through the website. You can get all the details about all their services there as well. GutterPros.com.
Dude, this house is perfect. Crumbs everywhere, sticky counters. I've already texted the colonies.
Sweet, I'll bring my 500 cousins. This'll be the biggest ant rager of the summer.
Let's party! Wait, what's that sound? Oh, no, it's those trucks with the green wheels. Party's over, man. Party's over.
This is Derek, the owner of All Solutions Pest Control. We'd love to help you out. Give us a call today for a free estimate at 636-486-7888.
If a pest-free home is your goal, call All Solutions Pest Control.
1 in 4 women will have an abortion before the age of 45 in this country. That's the tragedy we must work to stop. Mike Ferguson from The Morning Show here, and that is why Reach Reproductive Health is here. to empower parents to save the lives of innocent children and to see these families come to Christ. And you can be a part of saving and changing lives. So pray and visit outreachforlife.org to learn more, volunteer, and donate. That's outreachforlife.org.
Hi, Sandy. What's that?
I'm reading up on this Amendment 4 on the August ballot.
What's for?
Amendment 4 absurdly creates a new un-American minority veto power, but only for ballot issues that we citizens put on the ballot.
Don't they say it'll protect conservative ideas?
Truth gets in the way of their story. Amendment 4 would mean as few as 5% of the most liberal statewide voters in one congressional district could veto any good conservative idea or reform, even when a big majority supports it.
That does sound un-American. How did that get on the ballot?
The politicians put it there, and it would empower a small minority of liberals. They could stop funding for police, stop tax cuts, or any other common sense conservative policy we support.
Only 5%? One district? That would make it nearly impossible to pass needed reforms or rein in politicians.
Yep, Amendment 4 is a misguided power grab by politicians. I'm voting no on Amendment 4.
Right. I'm not giving up my constitutional rights. It's a hard no on 4.
Paid for by Missourians for Fair Governance.
This hour of Colombo Company brought to you by Gutter Pros. Water goes where we tell it. Call 314-656-7195 or visit them at gutterpros.com.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 101.9 News Talk STL with Crane Durham from NothingButTruth.com with us for one more segment today. So great to have Crane back. Crane, as I mentioned, Ilhan Omar back in the news. So if you remember, she went from saying that she's not a millionaire and that she's, can relate to the average American when it comes to finances, and then several months ago, the financial disclosures came out, and her husband were worth millions. They had a winery that was worth between $1 and $5 million, and he had a firm that was worth between $5 and I think $20 million, or $6 and $30 million, whatever it was. So they were actually millionaires. Well, today they're not, because she's released new financial disclosures that show dramatically lower reported asset values than the earlier filing. This has to do with Ilhan Omar and her husband, Tim Minette. In a financial report meant to cover 2024, the Minnesota Democrat claimed that she and her husband controlled between $6 million and $30 million in assets. Figures that raised eyebrows as people honed in on allegations of fraud in Minnesota, especially among the Somali community, and on her various statements of not being a millionaire and all of these things when she obviously was. However, now, according to her most recent financial reports, her and her husband have between $15,000 and $50,000 of credit card debt, while the Congresswoman has a student loan balance also worth between $15,000 and $50,000. And his businesses, the winery, he says they now say is not even open anymore, so it's worth nothing. And his venture capital advisory firm, which was previously reported being valued between $5 million and $25 million, has now also been reduced to zero. Zero! It's evaporated. Omar and her senior staff have stated that her husband was one of many partners in the wine and advisory businesses, and that's why there was so much confusion, because there were so many hands in the pot, I guess. And he makes nothing now. Which either means that either they're lying to us, that's kind of thing might be happening, Crane, or he's a terrible business person because he's been working in Washington, D.C. and a part of this firm for decades. If it's worth zero, then that's a problem. What's going on here? And do they really expect us to buy this from them?
Well, they will buy it as long as the media covers for it. I don't think she'd have a career 24 hours from now if she were a Republican. I truly believe that. I mean, she married her brother. I guess, did they divorce or what happened? I don't know. But the idea of so much smoke, it's very similar to me when we talk about the finances and trading and the possible corruption, generally speaking. I look at Nancy Pelosi and what's his name? Scott Pelley, the guy who is obviously one of the most arrogant. I mean, it reminds me, he needs to go to Don Lemon, Dan Rather Island, okay? Because they are on planet stupid and ignorant. Because they go back and look at their statements and everything else, they still think they have any shred of credibility. Poor Don Lemon, he's just dumb. He is a very dumb man. And he's not the dumbest person in the world, but if the dumbest person in the world passes away, he may be up to replace him. Okay, so the idea of this is that there's something here, there's a lot of smoke, and this is where the press would come in if we were Republican and explain it and go through it and say, wait a second, and hold them to it. It would be a front page story every day, and it would hit. And it doesn't hit because she has a D by her name. She's part of the general Islamist movement in this country that's undermining our entire system. Now, that doesn't mean she's a terrorist. It just means that she has a very, very skewed view and a distorted view of what it means to be an American and what America's history truly is.
And a very high self, worth, thinking that she's better than the rest of us. And
don't they all have that though?
She can,
Zoran?
Yeah,
Zoran,
get away with lying to people about these kind of things.
And
One
smile.
more real quick here, Crane, also out of
yes.
Minnesota. Tim Walz tried to dunk on the president, and it backfired tremendously. Tim Walz yesterday put out a tweet that was calling out the president and the Reflecting Pool Project, saying that the president wasted millions of dollars in tax money on the Reflecting Pool in Washington, D.C., and was immediately smacked by Twitter responses saying, look, dude, not the one. You're not the one that should be talking about fraudulent spending and things like these. It's like last week when Hillary Clinton and talked about what was appropriate at the White House or not. It was like, you know what? You're not the messenger for this issue. Only about a minute left here, Crane. Final thoughts.
Just again, go to the idea that if there are by the name of Waltz or Newsom or Kamala in the way of this. And by the way, Tallarico, who's really creepy and theologically, I'm not an expert, but he's theologically retarded. Okay. So the idea here is accountability. We need more accountability. And the only way to do that is to tell the truth about the policies that we're facing. I love you so much.
Back at you, buddy. And I would say tell nothing but the truth. Crane Durham
Amen.
from nothingbutruth.com. Great to have you back, my friend. Looking forward to talking to you again very, very soon. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
That is the great Crane Durham back here on Colombo and Company. All right, we are going to keep the conversation going with Susie Moore. She joins us next.
Hey, it's Susie Moore for Window World. Did you know that in just over the last 20 years, Window World of St. Louis has improved the look and thermal efficiency for over 80,000 customers in St. Louis? Plus, Window World windows come with a lifetime warranty that covers all parts, glass breakage, and labor. And now, Window World is offering 36 months, same as cash financing with approved credit. Call them today at 800-GET-WINDOWS for a free in-home, no-pressure estimate. That's Window World at 800-GET-WINDOWS. They're the preferred window of the St. Louis Blues.
Hey, it's Vic Porcelli. We're sitting here with our great friend, Chris Cooper. Hi, Chris.
What's going on, Vic? How are you?
I hear you wrote another book. This one's an e-book. Is that right?
The Business Owner's Playbook for Financial Clarity. So it is a great book for entrepreneurs, a very short guide. Give people, business owners, the ability to understand key questions that are important, such as succession planning, legacy planning, getting the IRS out of our pockets, right? Because do you like paying taxes?
I do not.
I don't think anybody likes paying taxes, right? That just makes sense. And then always talking about protection. And then the other thing from a business owner perspective, perspective, what is the biggest asset a business owner has? Probably their business itself, right? We need to make sure we understand what the value of that business is as well.
So this new book, I'm sure, is incredibly expensive, right? How much?
No, it's a free resource.
Oh, it's free.
We provide guidance, we provide education because we want to make sure people feel educated and understanding, because sometimes you don't know what questions to ask, and we need to make sure we help arm people with information to ask the right question.
Reach out to Chris and Stacy today at SerenityWealthNow.com.
Investment advice offered through Fortis Capital Advisors, LLC.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural Health, co-owner of Optimal Nutraceuticals, and the host of Wellness One. Wellness One is designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you common sense science-based information regarding health and wellness. On the show, we discuss topics like thyroid health, gut health, hormone optimization, and many others. Our show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on Newstalk STL. And you can visit us at inhstl.com. That's inhstl.com.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour at Town Hall. I'm Bob Agnew in Washington. A sell-off in big technology spreading from Asia back to the U.S. today that pulled stocks lower on Wall Street. The growing likelihood of interest rate hikes coming up this year also helped to deflate a massive run-up in AI-related stocks in recent days. And at the closing bell, the high-tech NASDAQ was down about 555 points. A UN agency says a plan is underway to evacuate 11,000 stranded seafarers through the Strait of Hormuz. The announcement from the International Maritime Organization comes today, even as Iran's foreign ministry said no visit has been scheduled for UN inspectors to look at its nuclear sites.
The sites in question are those earlier bombed by the US. At a news conference in Tehran, Baghai's remarks appear to cut against those made by US Vice President J.D. Vance, who said negotiations in Switzerland won an agreement for the IAEA to visit Iranian sites. The IAEA has been in and out of Iran since Israel's 12-day war against Iran in 2025.
And that is Charles de Ledesma. Meanwhile, President Trump says there's no doubt about those inspections.
They're wrong. They know they're wrong. They told us inside, and we have it down 100% inspections. And if they were right, I'd cancel the meetings right now.
Vice President Vance said Monday UN inspectors could return as early as this week. The Pentagon tells senators it needs roughly $80 billion to help cover the cost of the war with Iran.
The White House Office of Management and Budget is yet to make a formal request to Congress, but Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has been making the rounds on Capitol Hill. A top deputy defense secretary told senators about the Iran funding request last week. Some lawmakers are skeptical of the deal President Donald Trump struck with Iran to end the war and wary of the next steps. The White House has requested a remarkable $1.5 trillion for the Pentagon, a nearly 50% increase over the current fiscal year's funding levels. Bernie Bennett, Washington.
More on these stories at townhall.com.
Advantage Gold, America's #1 precious metals company, is sounding the alarm that a storm is coming and that now is the time to diversify your portfolio before it's too late. That's why we're offering an emergency gold and silver protection kit valued at $49, absolutely free for anyone who calls today at 800-900-8000. This kit includes critical information for investors with a retirement account seeking to own physical gold and silver but want to do it tax and penalty free. Advantage Gold has helped investors protect and secure their wealth with physical gold and silver since 2014. Call Advantage Gold now at 800-900-8000 and we'll rush your emergency gold and silver kit plus a free copy of Ken Rogoff's book, Our Dollar, Your Problem. See how gold and silver can help you protect and secure your wealth with the help of Advantage Gold. Results vary. Consult your tax advisor before investing. Call 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
It's a beautiful sunny day out there. High temperatures in the low 80s. The humidity not bad at all. It's in the moderate range. And with all that sunshine, going to be beautiful. Very nice at the ballpark this evening with temperatures in the 70s. And again, not too muggy. Overnight lows in the 60s. Now showers and thunderstorms return to the forecast tomorrow as high temperatures reach into the low to mid 80s. In the First Alert Weather Center, I'm KMOV meteorologist Kent Earhart.
This hour of News Talk STL brought to you by Chris Cooper and Serenity Wealth Management. Business owners, download your free playbook for financial clarity at SerenityWealthBiz.com. That's SerenityWealthBiz.com. America turns 250 this year.
Happy 250th birthday.
And News Talk STL turns 5.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday, News Talk.
Here's to 250 years of freedom and 5 years of St. Louis's #1 for conservative talk. News Talk STL.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 101.9 News Talk STL. Great conversation in the 2 o'clock hour with the returning Crane Durham from NothingButTruth.com. If you missed any of that, make sure you subscribe to our podcast because it's the best way to make sure you never miss anything that happens here on the show. We put the show everywhere, so wherever you like to get podcasts on that platform, just subscribe to Colombo and Company. All right, busy 3 o'clock hour coming up. We're going to talk to former Missouri State Rep Justin Sparks in about 20 minutes from now. But first, we are going to talk to the host of Red State Radio every Sunday afternoon here on News Talk STL. From redstate.com, the co-host of Mike Ferguson in the Morning, which you can hear every weekday morning here on News Talk STL. Number 8 in your programs, number 1 in your hearts. Susie Moore is with us. Hello, Susie.
Hello, Tony.
How are you on this crazy day?
I'm good. Yeah, crazy is right.
So not only is there all kinds of stuff happening just, in the news cycle coming out of, we could do the whole day on just the news coming out of Iran, let alone everything else happening. But it's also a really busy time when it comes to the Supreme Court because we were getting some of these rulings of these various cases that we've dissected and talked about and, been waiting, anticipating these rulings. We're finally at that time of year. We're to that part of the calendar where we're starting to get some of these rulings and some of this news being made by the court. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's we are in the home stretch.
Yeah.
We know they're going to be done by next week, and as going into this morning, there were 17 decisions left. Oof. So we knew that they were going to be handing down some today, so there was a safe bet there were going to be multiple, and there were 5, which leaves 12 to get to. We know there's going to be another decision day on Thursday, and then next Tuesday, but my suspicion is they might sneak one more day in, either Friday or Monday.
And some of those are going to be the big ones, right? Some of the ones that we're still waiting on.
Yeah, I was pretty convinced that we'd get, one of the big ones today. And the ones I'm actually writing this in an article I'm working on right now, but they're always big to the people involved.
Sure.
And some of these have bigger implications but these aren't the ones that were handed down today aren't the ones that have been in the headlines and everyone's been talking about, eagerly waiting on the decisions. But yeah, so there's 8 kind of big consequential ones still left. So the next few days, the next week is going to be kind of crazy when it comes to Supreme Court news.
Yeah, can't wait. I can't wait because I know that, especially the things like birthright citizenship, some of the voting stuff. There's just really important decisions coming up, and it's going to be a lot to talk about, and I'm actually looking forward to getting some of these answers. So you mentioned that there were a few today. I've been kind of taking a look at a couple of them, but I'll let you start because you're the one that's, on top of this more than I am. What are the rulings today that have grabbed your attention?
Well, there were 5 total today, and I haven't had a chance to look closely at all 5 of them. I'm working on an article about one that has to do with green card holders and whether, when they leave the country, if they are coming back in, whether they have to be basically treated as legal residents or can be treated differently if they're accused of a quote-unquote crime. It's kind of a little convoluted, but there was a guy who was a green card holder, or what they call a legal permanent resident, lawful permanent resident from China, who was accused of counterfeit. I can't remember what it was. He was counterfeit. It was he was accused of a crime.
Yeah.
He left and went back to China before he was tried. And when he came back to into the country, they let him back in, but they basically treated him as someone who was like paroled into the country. And in other words, he doesn't have legal status here. And then he pleaded guilty to the charges. So then DHS moved to remove him, and they said you don't get to stay any longer. And he was saying that they didn't follow the rules they were supposed to follow, and they said, wait a second. There's this provision that says if you're, committed a crime or accused of a crime, we can treat you differently. So it just gets down to the nitty gritty about, what the standards are that the law enforcement and federal immigration officials can enforce when it comes to non-citizen persons who present themselves at our borders.
Yeah, and this is being reported as a win for the Trump administration. So was this something that the Trump administration was pushing for?
Well, it started to it unfolded originally under a prior administration, but they were the ones that argued it this year before the court, and they were certainly taking the position that they should absolutely have the right to treat people who've been accused of a crime differently for determining their lawful status than people who have not been accused of a crime. So, and it comes down to the court basically construing the Immigration and Nationality Act, the INA, and it's doing so in a way that is favorable to immigration enforcement, which is obviously one of the key facets of this administration. So yes, I would say this is a win on that issue, and one that this administration has been pushing for, and it'll have further implications beyond just this case.
So to kind of broaden out the conversation, so not specifically like the details of this ruling, but this argument and this conversation about the application of laws and rights and, like how we treat illegal immigrants or people that are, even maybe here legally. And this idea of, we've done lots of stories where we talk about how it feels like, and I would argue it doesn't feel like, it is very much in many places around the country, a different set of rules that illegal aliens are often granted more grace, given more leverage, not held to the same standard or account as citizens would be. And just this ruling and this conversation kind of reminds me of all of that. And yeah, of course, if somebody committed a crime and they come back over here, and even if they're supposed to be here legally, they should be subject to the way that anybody else would be treated. Like, by and large, when we see this argument, in your opinion at least, by and large, when we see this conversation happening across the country, do we need to like make a bunch of laws to say like, yeah, you have to follow the laws, whether you're an illegal immigrant or not, or here, or are those laws already exist and we just, choose not to follow them? Certain judges and cities and states just choose not to follow them, because I feel like it's kind of redundant to make laws or to have court cases to make the statement that, yeah, everybody has to play by the same set of rules. Does that make any sense?
No, I mean, it does. The law already exists. This is the court construing it and saying, no, under the law, this is all that the government is required to do in terms of someone's admissibility into the country, and they're following the law. This is a good example of the court taking a look at what the statute that Congress has already enacted and specified, what the parameters of it are, and just basically saying it needs to be enforced as it's written. So this is a win on a couple of fronts, not just on immigration, but just in terms of like, look, the law is already there. You need to enforce it instead of coming up with these creative ways to sidestep it.
It's amazing how many, just in general, how many stories, issues that we talk about would be solved or settled a lot quicker if we just enforced the laws on the books in so many cases. It's just it reminds me of that, and how we don't do a very good job of that. Another another decision released today, a unanimous decision about this Michigan couple. Has to do with when property is seized by the federal government. What's a fair price? How much should you be compensated? Right. That's what is at the crux of this issue. Can you explain the details of this ruling?
Yeah, this is one that's going to be a little misleading with people read like the headlines because it comes off sounding like these people totally got royally screwed by this decision, which I'm going to make an argument they did not. What the court decided today, what the Supreme Court decided was there was a dispute of property taxes for like $2,200 on their home, and because of that, the government the county foreclosed on their home and then sold it at an auction, tax auction, and sold it for considerably less than it would have been, that it was assessed at or than it would have brought at fair market value. But it sold it for like $120,000 less than it would have actually brought fair market value. It took out the tax amount that it claimed that it was owed, and the rest went to the property owners. And they were saying, look, that's not right. I mean, we should get the fair market value of this. Well, the one thing the court said was, no, the Constitution doesn't require anything about fair market value. It just says, and there's a long history of, basically, tax auctions and how surplus proceeds are handled. And all the Constitution requires is that you be compensated out of any tax sale. But that is assuming that the sale was handled properly. And there's some indication here that it may not have been, that maybe the dispute shouldn't have even been in existence to begin with, and maybe the county did do something underhanded. So in addition to saying, no, the Constitution doesn't require you to do like a fair market value assessment, it does say, it sends it back to the lower courts to take a closer look at what the county did here and whether it was even proper to conduct the tax auction to begin with. So these people may still have recourse. It's just when you're talking about a tax auction, there's not a requirement that it be sold for some specific value.
And do we know, like, for me at least, and I don't know if this has any legal bearing, but it certainly has bearing on my opinion, if these people were clearly, like, put themselves in this position by not paying taxes or intentionally dodging things, that then personally I have a little less, a little less grief for them if they if this was an issue that they were trying to work out and were actively trying to solve their tax issue and keep their house, and then they got it sold out from underneath their feet, then I have a bigger problem with it. But, if they were already trying to get away with not paying taxes or breaking the rules, then I have a little less, feeling for them on this.
That's why Justice Thomas's, it's not a dissent, it's a concurring opinion here, is really important because he lays out the fact that in this instance, they had challenged this previously and had gotten a ruling in their favor. So what ended up happening here by the county may have been completely underhanded, and they still have potential recourse on that front. So it's the story isn't over as far as they're concerned, and this appears to be a situation, at least if you read Justice Thomas's concurrence, where these people did get screwed over. But the good news is this decision doesn't say they don't have recourse. It just says if you didn't get screwed over, you're entitled, there's no requirement that it be fair market value. It's just about whatever it brings at auction. But if you did get screwed over, then that can be addressed by the lower courts.
You are exactly right about the way that this is being reported in the headlines when you read it. I don't know what it's been about the last couple of weeks, but I've brought up nuance and context a lot lately. And here's a perfect example of why it's important to have these conversations. And, why I certainly appreciate you, Susie, breaking all of these stories down for us and explaining the details because, a quick read of the headlines certainly doesn't always tell the whole story, and I think this is a great example of that.
Definitely not.
Absolutely. There's another story here that not necessarily well, maybe it is kind of a legal issue. I don't know if you had a chance to watch this at all, but I did want to just touch on this here real quick. We're talking to Susie Moore, co-host of the Mike Ferguson in the Morning Show, every weekday here on News Talk STL. The Media Research Center is out to prove The View, the television show The View, is a political operation, not a bona fide news interview program. Now, here's the interesting part of this. I didn't realize this until I looked into this this report and this lawsuit against ABC and The View. That, as it stands right now, at least what they claim to be, The View claims to be a bona fide news interview program, which if that's the case, then they don't have to abide by certain regulations like equal time during campaigns when it comes to politics and who they give airtime to and things like that. Would you classify, just personally, classify The View as a bona fide news interview program? Because I certainly
not
wouldn't.
even remotely. Not even remotely.
So the fact that they've been able to sort of claim that and the protections that go along with it are pretty amazing to me. And Disney and ABC, Disney, the parent company, and ABC are now basically on they've launched their own campaign urging viewers to support The View and, to try to make this case that they are a bona fide news and interview program, while these other entities like the MRC claim, and, there's some of this is already in court documents. They have a lot of proof, and the allegations are pretty heavy. Basically saying, like, not only are they not a bona fide news interview program, they are literally a communications wing. They're part of the Democratic political establishment, and their purpose is to advance those candidates and policies and issues through their platform. Really interesting. Again, we don't have all the details. We don't have time to get into all the details, but just exposing the fact that they've somehow gotten away with this claim and these protections that come along with being a bona fide news and interview program is something I think people should know is happening. What do you make of this, and are you interested in seeing how this all plays out?
Well, I'm definitely interested in seeing how it plays out. No, I think it's kind of laughable. I think if you polled 100 people about, name 5 network news shows, not one of them would mention The View as a news show. No one, not even the people that actually watch The View, think it's a news show. And if someone thinks that they're getting news from The View, I would like to know so I can know to avoid them, because I'm not sure that they're operating with, all of their brain cells. But it obviously they're trying to skirt the rules by making that claim. I don't think it's going to stand up to scrutiny, and I think it's fine for it to be challenged. The rules are there. I mean, you can say the rules shouldn't be there. You should say they should be changed. That's fine. Lobby to do that. But as they stand right now, it's a network show. It's subject to FCC licensing, and there are specific rules and prohibitions when it comes to particularly political candidates and causes that they have to be mindful of. And that's one of the ways, people always go, oh, but what about Fox News? Well, Fox News isn't a broadcast news, is a network show. It's a cable show. So it's not subject to the FCC regulations the way that network is. So, I just think it's kind of funny. Of all the people that I would get news from, I would consider David Muir, a news personality. I would consider Scott Pelley, until recently, a news personality, as much as I am well aware of his biases. But Joy Behar.
Not Joy Behar?
Goldberg ain't it.
Not Sonny Hostin? You don't think
No.
you don't think she's the
I
dictionary
kind of think
definition
that
of
maybe her law degree probably should be reexamined. But
You don't think Sonny's the dictionary definition of media integrity?
Not in the slightest.
Not in
No, sir.
the slightest. Well, Susie, we're almost out of time here, but I know you're going to be very busy in the coming days here as we get these final decisions of the year from the Supreme Court. What's the deadline? How long until we know for sure that we'll have all of these decisions?
Well, so there's not like a set deadline. The tradition is that by the end of June is generally the end of the term, but they have in the past, they've gone over to like July 1st or 2nd. That does happen. I have said all along, I've probably said it on your show, they're going to get out of there by June 30th if at all possible, because none of them is going to want to be stuck in D.C. for the America 250, chaos that's going to be involved. They're going to be getting the hell out of Dodge. So my prediction is Tuesday, maybe Wednesday next week is for sure the last day. One of those has got to be. They've got 12 cases left. They've got, the birthright citizenship. They've got presidential appointees who can be removed. They've got temporary protected status. Is it temporary? They've got the vampire rule out of Hawaii about, having to basically give someone permission.
That one's
carry a
amazing.
gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Transgender athletes. Mail-in ballot deadlines. So there are big cases to come. So brace yourself for Thursday, brace yourself for next Tuesday, and don't be surprised if there's one more day. Either way, we're getting 12 cases. Most of them are like pretty big implications.
Yeah, voting rights, gun rights, the birthright citizen. There's some big ones coming up. We'll definitely talk to you next Tuesday, but I can't promise that we don't call on you again, especially if one of these big ones drop over the course of the next few days. Susie Moore from redstate.com, Red State Radio, Mike Ferguson in the morning. I don't know how you do it all, but I certainly appreciate you taking some time out for us here each and every week. Susie Moore, thanks as always. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Tony. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Great stuff there from Susie Moore. All right, we're going to keep the conversation rolling here. I want to get back into some of the latest developments coming out of the Iranian deal. Also, some more happening around the United States, some issues that are happening back here at home. And to help us with that conversation is going to be the former Missouri State Representative, our law enforcement expert, Justin Sparks, will be with us next.
Watch us on our live stream using Rumble, Facebook, and Twitter.
Well, here's what's on my mind. I think I got the solution to immigration.
News Talk STL. News, analysis, opinion.
Fox News commentary with Craig Gutfeld. Next.
When I started skiing, I didn't think about setting any records. When I won my first race, I didn't think about how many more I might win. So when I made it to the top of the world, it never crossed my mind to stop. Being the best isn't the same as being your best. There are no shortcuts to the top, so find the people who help get you there. I'm Michaela Schifrin, and that's what Team Stiefel means to me. If you're an advisor or an investor, choose Stiefel, where success meets success.
Stiefel Nicholas and Company Incorporated. Member SIPC and NYSE.
Past performance is no indication of future results. Investing involves risk. Consult a financial advisor before making any investment decisions.
Here's Greg Gutfeld.
Socialism, unfortunately, has an exemption from any kind of demand of evidence that we require from capitalism every single day. We look and we see how capitalism is doing. There isn't any here because it's a luxury belief that is indulged by the people who teach it on campuses, which is then feed it to the young people. They don't know any better. They exploit the compassionate label, pretending that if you split up a pie, that's compassion. It's not compassion if you don't know how to make more pie. A socialist can't even make a Necco wafer. I mean, think about it. There is no country that has ever succeeded under socialism. And you can say, oh, there are types of of socialism. There's types of, no, the only types of socialism are capitalism handicapped by some socialism.
For more commentary like this, go to foxnewspodcast.com.
Don't let spring surprises ruin your comfort. Johnson Heating and Cooling in Wentzville is offering air conditioner checkups for just $99. We'll check your Freon, inspect your condensate hose, and test all electrical connections. Plus, we'll clean your system for no additional charge if you act before June 30th. Keep your home running smoothly this season. Visit johnson-heatingandcooling.com. That's johnson-heatingandcooling.com. Johnson Heating and Cooling. Your comfort, our priority.
When insurance companies know you're represented by Under Law, they know Under is not going to let you be pushed around. Their reputation is built on years of courtroom battles. If you suffer an injury or damage to your property, serve the insurance company notice you have Under Law on your side. A St. Louis firm you can trust to protect you at every term. Don't settle for less. You want to win? Believe me, Under wins. Under, O-N-D-E-R, underlaw.com.
Bill, that's a big smile for an old politician.
I'm thinking about our plan. It's slick enough to make a lobbyist blush. First, we hoodwink voters with Amendment 5. Tell them it's a tax cut. Once they're hooked, we decide who pays the higher taxes.
So it's not a tax cut plan, and we don't get a say?
Right, just swaps who pays the tax, but it does remove 3 voter-passed taxpayer constitutional protections. That lets us levy new taxes on services, increase sales taxes, and even tax home sales. And voters will no longer get to vote on tax hikes.
Higher sales taxes on groceries, gas, service taxes on doctor visits, childcare, and even rent on apartments. Jeez. Taxes could exceed 20%.
Sure, they figure that up to 80% of taxpayers will pay more taxes. Many, hundreds more. Seniors, they'll get hit even harder. But our big donors will cut a fat hog.
The ones getting butchered by Amendment 5 are most taxpayers. I'm voting no on 5.
Paid for by Missourians for Fair Taxation.
On the next
Larry Connors USA.
The story behind the story when CBS sent a consultant to tell me how to do my job. And what happened next?
Larry Connors USA. Now weeknights 6 until 8 on News Talk STL.
I'm a space cowboy. Bet you weren't ready for that.
Welcome back to Colombo Company on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL. Keeping the conversation rolling here. I am Tony Colombo in studio with producer Ashlyn, and now joining us on the line on a Tuesday afternoon. Normally with us on Mondays, but you got to roll with the punches in your life schedule, and really appreciate Justin Sparks, former Missouri State Representative, our law enforcement expert here on the show, for joining us on this busy Tuesday afternoon. Justin, how are you?
Always a pleasure, Tony. Happy to join you.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Really appreciate it. I saved this story because I wanted to get the law enforcement opinion on this headline. I was going to talk about it with Susie, but there's a lot going on with the Supreme Court. I was going to kind of unpack the legal side of things with Susie, but I think the more important and impactful part of this issue comes from the law enforcement side. So I talked about this story yesterday, but just to give everybody a reminder, yesterday, Justices Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas spoke out and dissented from the Supreme Court's refusal to hear a case that those two justices say forces police officers to create a separate set of rules for racial minorities. So this case has been just the Supreme Court won't hear it, so the lower court's ruling stands. And this is a problem, in my opinion. So let me explain. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but I want to explain the details for folks to get everybody up to speed on this. Quote, "It is dangerous to allow an individual to be treated differently based on statistics, studies, or expert testimony that purports to show that members of the racial or ethnic group to which he belongs are more likely to act in a certain way than are members of other groups," unquote. That was written by Samuel Alito on behalf of himself and Justice Thomas. So this all stems from a case coming out of Washington, D.C. The case is U.S. versus Dante J. Carter, involved a black man whose firearm and theft convictions were vacated after the D.C. Court of Appeals held that police seized him before they had reasonable suspicion. Officers later recovered a .40 caliber pistol from Carter's pants, and the government said that the gun had been stolen from an FBI agent's vehicle. According to the D.C. court, quote, this is from the court, quote, black Americans like Carter are especially distrustful of law enforcement and therefore less likely than other people to terminate a police encounter due to skepticism that any attempt to exercise their constitutional rights will be respected. Now, it's important to point out here that in the end, it appears that this guy was right, and he was stopped illegally by the police, and that's, that's fine, and that's good if his rights were violated, and they made that determination. That's great, but that's not the problem here. The problem here is that this court in Washington, D.C. has now made a precedent and put into law, essentially, that the behavior of a suspect, somebody having an interaction with the police, that their behavior and that interaction will be judged differently depending on their race, the color of their skin. Yep. And that sounds like something from 150 years ago. Justin, this sounds like different laws for different races. What is happening, and how difficult and how impossible is that from a law enforcement standpoint when a police officer is having an interaction with somebody that now they have to think, okay, well, this is a Latino suspect, so what are the laws here? What are the rights and laws that I have to remember for Latino suspects? Because it's different for everybody. I mean, right? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, I'm going to commend you because you're spending time on a super important story that did not get the attention it deserved. I read it, and of course, we had the active shooter, yet another active shooter up in Montreal. It was tragic and horrible, and other stories of the day that garner attention. And this one is far more significant than anybody really in the media is paying attention to. And the reason for that is it reveals that our judiciary is compromised, that our judiciary at the very highest levels are not following the Constitution. They're not following hundreds of years of precedent, but what they're trying to do is adjudicate and come up with decisions that reflect current popular opinion, the current temperature of the population. That's super dangerous. It should never happen with the judiciary. The judiciary is supposed to be impartial. There's a reason they're not elected most often, especially the Supreme Court. They're unelected judges because they're supposed to remain impartial and immune from the pressures of the population. The population can sometimes be a mob, and they have to remain immune from those pressures. Now, we know human nature. They're not immune. They hear the same criticisms. They suffer, and they feel the pressures, and they balk, and they bend, and we know that that's true because they're human beings after all, right? If Justice Kavanaugh or anybody else has protesters outside their door, believe me, they take that into account. They're afraid for their families. It does work. They're human beings. However, you signed up for the job, you got to do the job, and you took an oath, which means you're supposed to adjudicate and interpret the law as it was written and as it was intended. We do not treat people differently based on the color of their skin. And when this story came out and this decision was handed down, there was a collective sigh of disgust from every police officer that read the story around the country, because they all knew exactly what was being said. We have heard this excuse for the last 2 decades. Why did you run from the traffic stop? I was scared. Oh, you were scared. Why were you scared? Yeah, well, because I'm a different color, and the police, police brutality or police shootings. We've heard this excuse for years. When in reality, it's because you had a stolen gun tucked into your pants. You're a convicted felon, and you know that's an automatic 5 years in federal prison. That's why you ran. You're a criminal, and you're a liar. And that's why criminals will use any excuse you give them, including race is the most obvious, easy one, to do exactly what this criminal did. He had a stolen gun. And by the way, Tony, if his rights were impinged or infringed upon and he was illegally stopped, we already have a mechanism for correction.
Right.
It's called the fruit of the poisonous tree, and his conviction would have been thrown out anyway. What we didn't need was yet another excuse for criminals to break the law and then use the convenient excuse of race. And that's not in the law. And what the court just did was put it there.
Yeah, and they went out of their way to put it there because you're exactly right.
Exactly.
They could have just ruled on the case and said, oh, this was an illegal search and seizure, and, therefore this guy's, not guilty, and left it at that. They went out of their way to put race into this ruling. A little bit more on this. D.C. court reasoned that Carter's race was relevant to whether a reasonable person in his position would have felt free to end the police encounter. It ruled that the encounter effectively became a seizure and that such an action was unlawful because police officers hadn't established reasonable suspicion before subjecting him to it. Justices Alito and Thomas argued that the D.C. ruling effectively forces law enforcement to treat people differently based on their race. Are we in the 2020s, or are we in the 1920s or the 1820s? What is happening here? Back to Alito, he said, quote, under the test, officers will need to quickly assess a person's race, and if officers and courts must craft special rules for black persons, what about dark-skinned Latinos, other Latinos, and members of other minority groups? We have said that our Constitution is colorblind. It almost never allows government actors to treat persons differently based on their race, unquote. All of that from Samuel Alito. And Justin, that there are other cities around the country that have seen this precedent be set by Washington, D.C., and don't think for a second that this is not something that could spread across the country.
No, just think about this. If you want to know where this is going to lead to, if you want to go down this road, it's not hard to figure out because they've already gone down this road in the UK, and we just had a story in which this was the case. This exact thing happened in which color and race was taken into account on the police response. Do you remember it? It was when a young man was stabbed by a Sikh, a man of color. He was stabbed, and he called the police. And what did the police do when they got there? Well, in fact, the Sikhs called the police, right? And they accused the young man of racism. So when the police arrived, they took the white young guy, into custody and watched as he bled to death. Well, what happened when the video footage came out later? He was not the perpetrator. He was not the aggressor. It was, in fact, the Sikh. It was, in fact, the perpetrator. But the police have been trained that the white person is in the wrong automatically from historical implicit bias and racism. And so they immediately assumed that he was the aggressor. They took him into custody and handcuffed him, and he bled to death. That's what eventually happens when you treat people based on their skin color, which is something we don't do in this country.
Yeah, and until that is truly and equally enforced, that all people are treated equally, then we'll never get there. If we try, to turn the tables now in the other direction to somehow make it even, you will never ever solve the problem. And this is a bad deal. And I wanted to talk about it because I'm afraid that is something that will now spread. If the Supreme Court has already said we're not going to touch this, and it gives a green light to cities and states across the country, to try to enact this kind of thing, and Now, all of a sudden, we've got different rules, literally different rules, different laws for different races in the United States. What is happening? We're talking to a former Missouri State Representative, our law enforcement expert, Justin Sparks. And before we hand things off to the Tim Jones and Chris Arp show at 4 o'clock, I got another one that might get your blood boiling, Justin. A story out of New York. A New York school board vice president who called himself the first drag queen elected to a public school board has been arrested on charges of sexual misconduct against children. Oh, boy. We're going to talk about that story and more as we continue with Justin Sparks next.
Follow Tony Colombo on Twitter at Tony Colombo Talk.
Tired of being the main course at your own backyard barbecue? Meet the Mosquito SWAT team. Every member is a licensed technician who custom mixes your treatment on site. We've got over 15 options and we never lock you into a contract. Take back your backyard, themosquitoswatteam.com.
The team at Grasser Home Services, of course, you know, has always been the place for all of your electrical needs, but it is so much more when you talk about the team at Grasser. Great local family-owned business. This is one of the best things. This is why we trust Grasser with, the issues within our home is because they're a local business. They are here in our community. They're part of our community. They've been around for a long time. They're going to be here for a long time. And, it's that type of reputation that I look for, certainly, when I'm having somebody come in my home and work on something as important as my electrical needs or plumbing needs. And it just truly, to me, is one of the things that sets Grasser apart from the rest, not to mention the techs there. You're not going to find a better group of professionals, customer service when it comes to the techs at Grasser. These are exactly the type of professionals that you want to trust with things, as important as your electrical needs and plumbing needs inside your home, inside your business, whatever it may be. As I said, Grasser Home Services specializes in all of your electrical needs, always have, ranging from large-scale commercial projects all the way down to simple home service needs like replacing a bad light switch. But now, on top of all of that, also all of your plumbing needs, from fixture and pipe repairs and replacements, including garbage disposal, sump pumps, and water softeners. The team at Grasser Home Services has you covered with the best service possible in those areas as well. They also offer free quotes for new projects. So if you have an electrical problem or just need a quote for new work, whether it is electrical or plumbing, you need to contact Grasser now. Call them and check them out on the website. Call Grasser.com, GrasserElectric.com also, but call Grasser.com for all of your details and all of your needs when it comes to Grasser Home Services.
Every summer, homeowners make plans: a new grill, a backyard project, a family vacation. But what about the upgrades you could enjoy every single day? Your windows drafty, difficult to open? Your patio entry door has seen better days? Now's the time to make a change. Renewal by Anderson makes replacing windows and doors simple. Beautifully crafted products, professional installation. And right now, save big. Get $1,000 off your patio or entry door and take $400 off each replacement window. And if you schedule your appointment before July 12, get an additional $250 off your entire purchase. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit renewalbyanderson.com. 877-WINDOWS or visit renewalbyanderson.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service.
News Talk STL is turning 5, and you're invited to the party. Join us Friday night, June 26th at Frankie Martin's Garden in Cottleville for a totally rad celebration with the Retro Nerds, St. Louis's favorite 80s tribute band. Live on the outside stage from 7 to 10. It's an all-ages show, so bring the whole family and stop by and see us at the News Talk STL Pavilion right near the stage. Frankie Martin's Garden, the place for and about community in Cottleville. Details at frankiemartinsgarden.com.
Rhino Shield is engineered to outlast paint by a lot, backed with our 25-year transferable warranty. Paint a house, shield a home. We do brick, block, stucco, asbestos, steel, aluminum, cedar, and more. We are the only coating company selected by Disney, This Old House, and 3 times on HGTV's Curb Appeal, where all 3 episodes concentrate on unpainted brick. If you maintain or own a business with a tired-looking building, you owe it to yourself to look at Rhino Shield and our beautifully durable color schemes. Evaluations are free. We're making buildings pop and be noticed again, from Champaign to the Lake of the Ozarks, exceeding expectations every day with our products, people, and performance. Now is the time to call 877-25-RHINO, 877-25-RHINO, or go to 877-25rhino.com and see how honest and transparent we really are. Tell them, ladies.
Don't paint, don't vinyl, go Rhino Shield. Never paint your house again. Rhino Shield.
And the caravan is on its way. I can hear the man.
Welcome back to Colombo Company on 101.994.1 News Talk STL. Tony Colombo here in studio, and a few minutes left here with our guest, Justin Sparks, former Missouri State Representative. Justin, I want to call out the absurdity of this New York thing, but I also want to talk about a couple of local issues. So let's try to rapid fire a couple of these things. New York school board vice president who proudly called himself the first drag queen elected to public school board has been arrested on charges of sexual misconduct against children. Travis Barr Longo, 46 years old, was arrested by New York State Police following an investigation into allegations that he had engaged in a pattern of sexually explicit digital communications with a child under the age of 12. Longo, who serves as vice president of the Central School District Board of Education, faces 4 counts of endangering the welfare of a child. We could dig into this a little bit deeper here, Justin, but my problem is from the very start of that story. The first drag queen elected to public school board. Look, you know me. I'm wear what you dig, live your life, love who you love, sleep who you want to sleep with, marry you. I'm okay with all of that. But as long as you're not hurting me or hurting other people. Obviously, this guy was hurting other people, and that's a big problem. But also, like, there's just an appropriateness of things. Like, I'm not the first radio host who's also a heart surgeon because you don't want me to be your heart surgeon because I'm not the... What is that? You know, like, I don't have the right qualifications. A drag queen that's the vice president of a school board, we already got a problem. Yeah. Hear your thoughts.
Well, Tony, this is what happens when you relegate behavior that used to be at the fringes of society and you normalize it, okay? And for example, years ago in the police department, if a man went into a woman's bathroom and received sexual gratification from doing so, then we would arrest that person because that makes girls uncomfortable. But all across the country, we have that happening in certain corners now of our society, certain jurisdictions and cities, in private establishments. It's perfectly okay for men to go into women's bathrooms. And we're even having congressional testimonies in which we talk and we interview biological males, and we interview so-called witnesses in which they can't define what a biological male or a biological female is, and simply
can't
go
or
on
won't
diatribes about how we feel. Exactly. Refuse to.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we're at, and it's a refusal to have a candid, honest conversation. And that's dangerous. And here's why. Because you have stories like this in which innocents are harmed, particularly children. This is not the only example. There are countless stories out there of very similar behavior, and in particular, children are involved. For example, drag queens having a show, people of adults can go to it if that's your proclivity and you decide to. That's America. I don't go to drag shows, but some people do. And yet, Tony, that's not enough. Now we have to have drag queen story hour at the local library, and we have to have tax dollars supporting it. See, now we have to have drag queens dancing about in very revealing clothes, sometimes with sex toys and suggestive material, in front of children. And yet we don't see prosecutions of this behavior. We don't see criminality of this behavior. We see acceptance of this behavior, which then leads to what? Abuse.
Me, Tony Colombo.
Normalization of it.
Italian, the Colombos from Sicily. Italian family, Tony Colombo, but I'm going to run for president of the Irish League of North County. No. There's nothing wrong with you being Italian, but you're not, this is not the spot for this. Just like drag queen, And this guy's a criminal. Look, he's a criminal, and there's criminals in every walk of life. But why do we have to try to force these lifestyles in everybody's face, and especially in areas where they don't belong, like the drag queen that was on the lawn of the White House during the Biden administration on Easter, and a drag queen, the vice president of a school board. It's so important to the progressive left to insert this and force these these issues into every aspect of life, and it just is it's inappropriate, and it ultimately hurts everyone, including those groups, because now those groups are being judged on a on a larger basis when it comes to these issues.
Of course. Again, you have to draw the line, and if you're a healthy society has to draw the line, Tony. So, laissez-faire. If you have a libertarian mindset, which we've talked about many times, we believe in freedom, and we also believe that you can make poor decisions. Right? Yeah. That's what freedom is, and you can live the way that you're going to. But we have to draw the line somewhere, and the reason for that is a healthy life, a healthy culture, a healthy society has to draw appropriate boundaries to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is the mark of a healthy society.
And enforce those boundaries.
Continue to enforce that. That's exactly right.
Hold people to account. Hold people to account when they are breaking the law, when they're hurting themselves or hurting others or putting people in danger. And much like the conversation that we had earlier about the rolling out of D.C., to continue to set forth different rules for different groups is not the way to have a productive society moving forward. And that's why these conversations are so important, and I appreciate so much your time. Justin Sparks, former Missouri State Representative. Always a great conversation, my friend. Look forward to talking to you again very soon. Have a great rest of your day.
God bless, Tony.
Yeah, back at you, buddy. Awesome stuff there from Justin Sparks. All right, that is going to do it for us here on Colombo and Company. Ashlyn and I will be back tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Again, if you missed anything from the show today, we put the show out as a podcast right after we get off the air every day on basically every podcast platform. So wherever you get podcasts, subscribe to Colombo and Company on that platform. You'll never miss anything that happens here on the show. We're back tomorrow. Keep it here. Larry's commentary is next, then the Tim Jones and Chris Arp Show.
Hey, it's Chris Arps. Becky and I recently discovered a restaurant that's quickly become one of our go-to restaurants, Timothy's in Creve Coeur. Led by executive chef Will Mabry, Timothy's serves contemporary American cuisine with a touch of Southern charm. Dishes like pastrami, smoked lamb, and shrimp and grits. My wife absolutely loved the lobster pot pie, and everything we've tried has been incredible. Amazing house-made desserts and over 500 wines to choose from. Enjoy dinner 7 nights a week, plus lunch, brunch, and private events. Timothy's in Creve Coeur at 12710 Olive Boulevard or online at timothysstl.com.
This is Larry Connor's commentary on News Talk STL.
Colorado's 1st congressional district is held by a Democrat in office almost 30 years, a solid leftist pushing to eliminate ICE. But she is tame compared to her Democrat challenger. The self-described socialist running against her is pushing a trans Bill of Rights. Her campaign wants greater force to protect trans kids, greater force to encourage them. She also wants guaranteed free abortions. Even did a video with a sound effect that says, "I love abortion." Note this, if her mother had aborted her, she would not be allowed to push murdering other children. And her Trans Bill of Rights makes it clear that anyone against allowing children to have trans surgery is horrific, a horrible person. Why? Because you wanted to protect children. You know, when the vote is counted, I'm sure she will get one vote, hers. But the reality is she will get more than one vote.